Thank you so much, Gregg. Thanks for passing the glass to me, and it was great to see your responses to these really important questions. So, one statistic that I wish everyone knew is something that I think we all know intuitively, which is the majority of large cities and human settlements are built around freshwater bodies. The statistic is somewhere between 50 and 80% of large cities are built near freshwater bodies. And I think this is a statistic that shows us really how important freshwater is to people, and how reliant we are on nature, that kind of freshwater and all that it brings for our well-being, for being in community with other people. Um, so the freshwater that supplies those cities is really critical for many things, for drinking, of course, but also for things like transportation to and from those cities, bringing people and also goods, things like fishing to nourish our cities, things like manufacturing, and so much more. So we know that right now, over 50% of the global population is living in cities, and that number is expected to increase by about 2/3. So for me, the statistic around the number of cities that are near freshwater, the number of people around the world that are living in cities, is a really critical one that I wish everybody knew, and also really important for us to think about how those cities will have sustainable and resilient supplies of water into the future. One way that I think that others should see water differently is not to just think about water bodies, the lakes, the rivers, the oceans, but also to think about the places that that water is coming from. Um, so thinking about that connection between land and water, at TNC, we speak a lot about resilient watersheds. So thinking about the land areas where precipitation is falling and where it drains into those water bodies. And so, what people do on the land is really critical for what happens in those water bodies. Some of the research that TNC has done has found that 4 out of 5 cities in the world could have improved water quality and quantity based on what people are doing on the land, especially through nature-based activities in those source watersheds. Things like forest restoration and protection, wetland restoration and protection, improved agricultural practices. So I think it would be really important if people see water differently through thinking about those connections between the land and the water, between people and nature, and how what we're doing on the land really impacts what's happening in our water. And that there are simple solutions that we could use through nature that we could do on the land that could improve what's happening in our water bodies as well. What gives me hope to create a water resilient future is that increasing number of actors who are working on water issues, different community groups or water utilities who are providing water to people, or corporations and companies that are using water in their processes, development finance institutions that are providing funding to develop water infrastructure around the world, and others who really are very involved in water issues are starting to increase the amount of investment that they're making in nature-based activities for water outcomes. So we think about, a lot of that work in being in traditional gray infrastructure. But as we say at TNC, that pathway to clean water is not exclusively lined in concrete. We really think that nature can help. So I'm given hope. I'm inspired by the additional investment that we're seeing all of these different actors make in nature. We know that we will continue to need those gray solutions to our water challenges, but we're seeing more and more blended approaches being used where nature and concrete, where green and gray are coming together. And I think that as we continue to do more and more of that, we'll see more resilience, both for people and for nature, and in those water systems that are so critical for people. Now, I would like to pass the glass to a dear colleague of mine at the Nature Conservancy, Robin Abell. She is our Global Director of Freshwater Protection, and Robin is an established leader in freshwater conservation science, and she focuses on what it takes to protect and conserve freshwater ecosystems and their biodiversity. Over to you, Robin.